Ambassador Zethkari stepped out of his diplomatic shuttle and onto the landing pad of what humans called Kennedy Space Center. His 3 hearts beat in a careful rhythm as he adjusted his environmental suit. The gravity here was slightly heavier than his homeworld, but nothing his species couldn't handle. What concerned him more were the reports about these humans, a newly discovered species that had somehow achieved spaceflight despite their primitive technology. The Velthari had been chosen as Earth's first contact ambassadors because of their peaceful nature and careful diplomatic approach. Zethkari's people had evolved from small, cautious herbivores who survived by avoiding risks and thinking through every decision 3 times. This made them excellent diplomats and terrible warriors, which suited the Galactic Council perfectly. As he walked toward the reception building, Zethkari reviewed his briefing materials one more time. Humans were bipedal mammals, roughly his size, with a relatively short lifespan of about 100 of their years. They had developed nuclear technology before achieving sustainable energy, which was unusual but not unheard of. Their planet showed signs of environmental damage that was slowly being repaired. Nothing in the report suggested they would be particularly dangerous or difficult to work with. A human female approached him, dressed in what his briefing identified as formal clothing, a dark blue garment called a suit. She was tall by his standards, with yellow hair tied back neatly, and she showed her teeth in what humans called a smile, apparently a friendly gesture rather than a threat display. Ambassador Zethkari, "Welcome to Earth," she said, extending her hand in the human greeting ritual. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, your cultural liaison. We're honored to have you here." Zethkari carefully shook her hand, noting that humans had a surprisingly firm grip. "The honor is mine, Dr. Chen. I look forward to learning about your fascinating species." As they walked toward the building, Dr. Chen pointed to various structures around the Space Center. "We thought we'd start with a tour of our launch facilities, then move on to some everyday human activities, so you can get a feel for our culture." "That sounds perfectly reasonable," Zethkari replied. "My people believe in careful observation before making any judgments." They entered a transport vehicle, humans called it a car, and Dr. Chen began driving toward what she explained was the city center. Zethkari was making notes on his portable recording device when something caught his attention through the transparent viewing panel. In the distance, he could see tall structures reaching toward the sky. Thin metal beams stretched between them, creating a framework that would eventually become another building. This wasn't unusual. Most species built upward as their populations grew. What made Zethkari's throat constrict with fear was the tiny figure sitting casually on one of those beams. "Dr. Chen," he said, his voice higher than usual. "There appears to be someone trapped on that construction framework. Shouldn't we alert emergency services?" Dr. Chen glanced where he was pointing and smiled that tooth-showing expression again. "Oh, that's just a construction worker taking his lunch break. Pretty normal sight in the city." Zethkari's primary heart skipped a beat. Through his enhanced vision, he could see the figure more clearly now. The human was sitting on a narrow metal beam at least 200 meters above the ground, with no visible safety restraints, casually consuming food and talking to other humans on nearby beams. They appeared to be having what Dr. Chen had called a conversation, a social bonding activity. "Lunch break?" Zethkari whispered. "At that height? Where are their safety restraints? Their emergency platforms? Their protective barriers?" "Well, they have hard hats," Dr. Chen said, pointing to the small protective covering on each worker's head. "And safety harnesses, though you can't see them from here. Construction work has gotten much safer over the years." Zethkari stared at her. "Safer? This is the improved version?" "Oh yes," Dr. Chen said proudly. "We used to have much higher accident rates. Now we have strict safety regulations." The ambassador's second heart began racing. His species had inherited an instinctive terror of heights from their prey animal ancestors. Even looking at tall structures through a window made him uncomfortable. But these humans were not only working at deadly heights, they were eating lunch there, socializing, treating it like a normal part of their day. "Perhaps," Zethkari said carefully, "we could observe some less elevated human activities." "Of course," Dr. Chen agreed. "Let's head to the shopping district. Very ground level, very safe." As they drove through the city, Zethkari tried to calm himself by focusing on the more reasonable aspects of human civilization. Their buildings were well constructed, Their transportation systems seemed efficient, and the humans he observed appeared healthy and organized. Perhaps the construction workers were an anomaly. Every species had individuals who took unnecessary risks. Then he saw the motorcycles. Two humans on small, two-wheeled vehicles were traveling at high speed between the larger transport vehicles, weaving through traffic with only centimeters to spare. They wore protective helmets, but otherwise appeared to have no barriers between themselves and the massive metal objects surrounding them. "Dr. Chen," Zethkari said, his third heart now joining the racing rhythm of the other two. "Are those humans experiencing some kind of emergency? Are they fleeing from danger?" "No, they're probably just commuting to work," she replied casually. "Motorcycles are pretty popular here. Good gas mileage, easy to park. They choose to travel this way, voluntarily. Sure, lots of people find it fun. Fun. They found risking death in traffic fun." By the time they reached the shopping district, Zethkari was beginning to suspect that humans might have a fundamentally different relationship with danger than any other species he'd encountered. Dr. Chen parked the car and led him toward a large building filled with shops and restaurants. "This is pretty typical daily life," she explained. "People come here to buy things, eat, socialize. Nothing too exciting." Zethkari was beginning to understand that when humans said nothing too exciting, he should prepare for terror. They entered the building through sliding glass, doors that opened automatically. Impressive technology, he had to admit. The interior was bright and filled with humans engaged in what appeared to be peaceful commercial activities. Zethkari started to relax slightly. Then he heard the screaming. His all three hearts nearly stopped. Dr. Chen, however, continued walking calmly as high-pitched human vocalizations echoed through the building. "What is that sound?" Zethkari gasped. "Are they in distress? Under attack?" Dr. Chen tilted her head, listening. "Oh, that's just kids playing in the playground. There's a children's area on the upper level. Playground, a designated area for their young to make sounds of terror." This species was even stranger than he'd thought. "Perhaps," Zethkari said weakly, "I should return to my shuttle to file my initial report." "Are you feeling all right?" Dr. Chen asked, looking concerned. "You look a little pale." "Well, paler than when you arrived." Zethkari's diplomatic training kicked in. He couldn't admit that an hour of observing normal human behavior had left him more terrified than a decade of peace negotiations with warrior species. "I'm quite well," he lied. "I simply need to process what I've observed so far." As they headed back to the car, Zethkari wondered what he was going to tell the Galactic Council. How could he explain that humanity's idea of a normal day included activities that would be considered extreme sports on any civilized world? He had a feeling this assessment was going to take much longer than originally planned. Zethkari woke up in what humans called a hospital, which he was discovering was both terrifying and necessary for their species. The medical facility existed specifically because humans regularly injured themselves in ways that required professional intervention. This concept was so foreign to his people that they didn't even have a word for it. Dr. Chen sat beside his bed looking worried. "I'm sorry about yesterday," she said. "I didn't realize our normal activities would be so overwhelming for your species." "It's quite all right," Zethkari replied, though his hearts were still beating irregularly. "I simply need to adjust my expectations. Perhaps we could observe some less stimulating aspects of human culture today." "Absolutely," Dr. Chen nodded. "I thought we could visit a typical human family. Very domestic, very calm. The Johnsons have agreed to let us observe their daily routine." Zethkari felt hopeful for the first time since arriving on Earth. Domestic life was usually the safest part of any civilization. How dangerous could family activities possibly be? An hour later, standing in the living space of what humans called a suburban home, Zethkari was reconsidering this assumption. The Johnson family consisted of 2 adult humans and 3 smaller ones in various stages of development. The smallest, barely able to walk properly, was currently climbing onto furniture that was several times its height. "Should we assist the small human?" Zethkari asked urgently. "It appears to be in danger of falling." Mrs. Johnson, a female with brown hair, laughed in the way humans did when they found something amusing. "Oh, that's just Tommy. He's always climbing things. Kids are natural explorers." Zethkari watched in horror as the tiny human successfully climbed onto a chair, then used it to reach a table, apparently intent on reaching even higher surfaces. When it finally tumbled off, landing on the soft floor covering, it made a brief crying sound before getting up and immediately attempting the same climb again. "This is normal behavior?" Seth Kari asked weakly. "Completely normal," Mr. Johnson confirmed, though we did have to baby-proof the house when he started walking. Put safety latches on cabinets, covers on electrical outlets, that sort of thing. The fact that humans had to specifically modify their living spaces to prevent their offspring from accidentally killing themselves was not reassuring. Seth Kari made a note to investigate how any young humans survived to adulthood. The middle child, a female approximately 8 years old, approached him with curiosity. "Are you really an alien?" she asked. "I am a Velthari," Seth Kari replied carefully. "We are from a different planet than Earth." "Cool. Do you want to see my skateboard?" Before Seth Kari could ask what a skateboard was, the child had run outside and returned with a small platform mounted on wheels. She demonstrated its use by standing on it and propelling herself forward using one foot against the ground. "Very interesting," Seth Kari said. "And this is a transportation device?" "No, it's just for fun," the child explained. "Watch this." She proceeded to launch herself down a sloped surface in the yard, gaining speed rapidly. Seth Kari's first heart stopped completely when she approached what appeared to be a set of constructed obstacles, ramps and rails, that seemed designed specifically to launch humans into the air. "Should I alert emergency services?" Seth Kari asked frantically. "She's wearing a helmet and pads," Dr. Chen said calmly. "Kids love extreme sports. It's good exercise, extreme sports, for children." As exercise. Seth Kari was still processing this information when the oldest child, a male around 15 years old, returned from what his parents called school. He was carrying a bag over his shoulders that looked heavy enough to cause spinal damage. "How was practice, Jake?" Mrs. Johnson asked. "Great. Coach says I might make varsity football next year if I bulk up a bit more." Seth Kari didn't know what football was, but the phrase "bulk up" sounded ominous. When Jake explained that football involved two teams of humans deliberately colliding with each other at high speed while trying to carry an object across marked territory, Seth Kari had to sit down. "And this is considered educational?" he asked. "It builds character," Mr. Johnson said proudly. "Teaches teamwork, discipline, how to handle pressure. It also taught humans to deliberately run into each other." But Seth Kari kept this observation to himself. The family invited him to stay for dinner, which seemed like a safer activity until he learned about their food preparation methods. Humans apparently cooked their food using controlled fire, boiling water, and sharp metal implements. Mrs. Johnson casually handled a large knife while preparing vegetables, moving the blade toward her fingers with practiced efficiency. "Isn't that dangerous?" Seth Kari asked. "You mean cooking?" Mrs. Johnson looked puzzled. "I suppose you could cut yourself if you're not careful, but everyone learns kitchen safety pretty early." Kitchen safety. They had specific training for food preparation because it was inherently dangerous. During the meal, Seth Kari observed the family's communication patterns. They discussed their daily activities with enthusiasm, sharing stories about events that would have sent his people into therapy. Jake talked about football practice where players regularly got hit hard enough to see stars. The middle child described a field trip where her class had visited a fire station and learned about running into burning buildings to save people. Even the smallest child contributed by demonstrating how he had learned to monkey bars across playground equipment suspended several meters above hard ground. After dinner, the family gathered around a large screen to watch what they called television. Dr. Chen explained that this was a common evening activity where humans observed fictional stories for entertainment. The program they selected appeared to show humans in various dangerous situations, being chased by predators, hanging from cliffs, engaging in combat with other humans. The family watched these scenarios while eating something called popcorn and making comments about which characters they hoped would survive. "This is entertainment?" Seth Kari asked. "It's an action movie," Jake explained. "Pretty tame compared to some of the stuff we watch." Tame. This was the mild version of human entertainment. As the evening continued, Seth Kari learned about other aspects of human domestic life that challenged his understanding of safety. The family kept a large, furry creature called a dog that was descended from pack hunters but now lived in their home and played with their children. They had a swimming pool in their backyard, a deep container of water where humans practiced controlled drowning for fun. The house itself was filled with electrical devices that could cause serious injury if misused, but were operated casually by family members of all ages. When it was time to leave, the Johnson family invited him to return any time. The children asked if he wanted to try skateboarding or swimming or playing football. Their enthusiasm was genuine and warm, but their casual relationship with danger left him speechless. On the drive back to his temporary lodging, Dr. Chen asked how he found the family visit. "They are very kind people," Seth Curry said honestly, "but I am beginning to understand why humans require medical facilities." "Oh, the Johnsons are actually pretty careful," Dr. Chen replied. "Wait until you meet families with teenagers who rock climb or surf or race cars." Seth Curry's three hearts collectively decided to take a break from beating for several seconds. "Perhaps," he said weakly, "we could focus on observing human professional activities tomorrow. Something calm and predictable." Dr. Chen smiled, though Seth Curry was starting to recognize that human smiles didn't always indicate safety. "I've arranged for us to visit a research laboratory," she said. "Very controlled environment. What could go wrong?" Those words Seth Curry was learning should never be trusted when spoken by a human. The next morning, Seth Curry arrived at the research laboratory feeling cautiously optimistic. Scientific work was usually quiet and safe across all civilized species. How much danger could there be in a controlled environment, dedicated to the careful study of natural phenomena? Dr. Chen met him at the entrance wearing what she explained was standard safety equipment: a white coat, protective eyewear, and closed shoes. The fact that humans needed safety equipment for thinking suggested this might not be as calm as he'd hoped. "This is the Brookhaven National Laboratory," Dr. Chen explained as they walked through security checkpoints. "We conduct research in physics, chemistry, biology, and materials science. Very routine scientific work." The first area they visited looked reassuring. Humans in white coats sat at workstations, looking at computer screens and writing notes. This was exactly what Seth Curry expected from scientific work: careful observation and documentation. Then Dr. Chen opened a door, marked with symbols that his universal translator identified as warnings about radiation. "This is where we study nuclear physics," she said cheerfully, handing him additional protective equipment. "Don't worry, the radiation levels are carefully monitored." Seth Curry's first heart stopped. "Radiation? As in the invisible energy that damages living tissue?" "Well, yes, but we take precautions," Dr. Chen replied. "See? Everyone wears dosimeters to measure exposure levels." She pointed to small devices clipped to the researchers' clothing. Devices specifically designed to measure how much tissue-damaging energy they were absorbing during their normal workday. "And this is considered safe?" Seth Curry asked through his radiation suit. "Safer than it used to be," one of the researchers replied, overhearing their conversation. "Modern shielding is much better than what we had 50 years ago. 50 years ago. Humans had been deliberately exposing themselves to radiation for at least 50 years, and they considered current levels an improvement." The next laboratory they visited was dedicated to chemistry. Humans in protective equipment worked with substances that required careful ventilation systems to prevent the air itself from becoming deadly. Seth Curry watched through reinforced viewing windows as researchers mixed compounds that could explode, corrode metal, or dissolve organic tissue. "We're working on new materials for spacecraft construction," explained Dr. Martinez, the lead chemist. "Some of these compounds are pretty reactive, but that's what makes them useful." "Reactive," Seth Curry repeated weakly. "Meaning they spontaneously release energy?" "Only under specific conditions," Dr. Martinez assured him. "We know exactly what triggers each reaction. Safety protocols are very strict." The existence of safety protocols implied that these humans regularly worked with substances dangerous enough to require specific procedures to avoid death. This was not reassuring. In the biology section, Seth Curry discovered that human scientists deliberately studied disease-causing organisms. They kept samples of viruses and bacteria that could kill their own species, stored in containers designed to prevent accidental release into the population. "Why do you study things that could harm you?" Seth Curry asked Dr. Walsh, the microbiologist showing them around. "To understand how to fight them," she replied simply. "You can't develop treatments or vaccines without studying the pathogens directly." This logic was sound but terrifying. Humans dealt with danger by getting closer to it, studying it, and learning to overcome it rather than avoiding it entirely. After the laboratory visit, Dr. Chen suggested they observe some other human professions. "I thought you might find it interesting to see our emergency services," she said. Zethkari was beginning to dread the word interesting when humans used it. Their first stop was a fire station, where they met Captain Rodriguez and his team. The building housed large vehicles equipped with water cannons, rescue equipment, and medical supplies. When Zethkari asked about their primary function, Captain Rodriguez explained it with obvious pride. "We respond to fires, medical emergencies, car accidents, building collapses, chemical spills. Basically any situation where people are in immediate danger and need help." "You run toward danger?" Zethkari asked. "When others are fleeing?" "That's the job," Rodriguez replied. "Someone has to help." The captain showed them equipment designed for entering burning buildings, including breathing apparatus for surviving in toxic smoke and insulated suits for withstanding extreme heat. He explained that firefighters regularly entered unstable structures that could collapse at any moment, searching for humans who might be trapped inside. "Isn't this extremely dangerous?" Zethkari asked. "Sure, but we train constantly to minimize the risks," Rodriguez said. "And someone has to do it. We can't just let people die when we might be able to save them." The concept of humans voluntarily choosing careers that involved running toward mortal danger to help strangers was so alien to Zethkari's worldview that he had to sit down for several minutes. Their next stop was a hospital emergency room, where Dr. Elizabeth Santos explained trauma medicine. The emergency room was specifically designed to treat humans who had been severely injured by the dangerous activities that apparently made up normal human life. "We see everything here," Dr. Santos said as they toured the facility. "Car accidents, sports injuries, workplace accidents, domestic mishaps, extreme sports injuries. You name it, we've probably treated it." Zethkari observed rooms full of equipment designed to keep humans alive after their bodies had been damaged in ways that would be fatal to most species. There were machines that could restart stopped hearts, devices that could help damaged lungs continue breathing, and surgical equipment for repairing broken bones and damaged organs. "This is remarkable technology," Zethkari admitted. "But why is so much of it needed?" "Humans get hurt," Dr. Santos replied matter-of-factly. "It's part of life. Our job is to fix them up so they can get back to living." She showed them cases from recent weeks. A human who had fallen while rock climbing and needed surgery to repair broken bones. Another who had been injured in a bicycle accident and required treatment for head trauma. And a child who had needed emergency surgery after eating something poisonous she found in her yard. "These are normal injuries?" Zethkari asked. "Pretty typical," Dr. Santos confirmed, "though we get some unusual ones too. Last week we had someone who got hurt trying to take a selfie with a wild bear." Dr. Chen had to explain what a selfie was and why anyone would voluntarily approach a large predator to take one. The explanation did not make the behavior seem more reasonable. As they prepared to leave the hospital, Zethkari reflected on what he'd learned about human professions. Scientists deliberately expose themselves to radiation, toxic chemicals, and deadly pathogens. Firefighters ran into burning buildings as a career choice. Medical professionals spent their lives repairing damage caused by humans engaging in activities that any sensible species would avoid. "Dr. Chen," he said as they walked back to their vehicle, "I'm beginning to understand that humans have a very different relationship with risk than my people do." "How so?" she asked. "My species avoids danger through careful planning and risk assessment. Humans seem to embrace it." "I wouldn't say we embrace danger," Dr. Chen replied thoughtfully, "but we don't let it stop us from doing things that are important or interesting. Even when those things might kill you." "Well, crossing the street might kill you," she pointed out, "but you still need to get to the other side." This casual acceptance of mortality as a factor in daily decision-making was perhaps the most alien thing Zethkari had encountered yet. His species planned for centuries to avoid any possibility of accidental death. Humans seemed to treat it as an acceptable risk in exchange for achieving their goals. "Tomorrow," Dr. Chen said, "I thought we could look at human entertainment and recreational activities, something lighter after all this serious professional stuff." Zethkari's 3 hearts collectively sank. If human professions involved this much voluntary danger, he was terrified to discover what they did for fun. Zethkari spent the night in his quarters trying to compose a preliminary report for the Galactic Council. How could he explain that humans considered radiation exposure, chemical burns, and running into fires to be normal occupational hazards? His people would think he was suffering from some kind of mental breakdown. Dr. Chen arrived the next morning with what she called comfortable clothes and an expression that Zethkari was learning to associate with impending terror. "Today we're going to experience human entertainment," she announced cheerfully. "I thought we'd start with something really fun, an amusement park." The name alone should have warned him. Any form of entertainment that required the word amusement as a qualifier was probably compensating for something. The amusement park turned out to be a large area, filled with mechanical devices designed specifically to terrify humans for recreational purposes. The first thing Zethkari noticed was the screaming, high-pitched vocalizations of distress coming from all directions. "Those are screams of joy," Dr. Chen explained, noticing his concerned expression. "People love roller coasters." She pointed to a massive structure of metal tracks that twisted and looped through the air. Small vehicles carrying humans raced along these tracks at speeds that would be considered reckless in any reasonable transportation system. The humans inside had their arms raised in the air and were making those terrifying joy screams as they plummeted toward the ground. "They pay money for this?" Zethkari asked weakly. "Absolutely. This park makes millions of dollars a year. Roller coasters are hugely popular." Zethkari watched families with young children standing in long lines, waiting for their turn to be launched through the air at potentially lethal speeds. Parents held the hands of small humans who bounced with excitement at the prospect of experiencing controlled terror. "Would you like to try one?" Dr. Chen asked. "I believe I will observe from here," Zethkari replied quickly. They moved through the park, past attractions with names like Death Drop, Screaming Eagle, and The Devastator. Each one was designed to simulate mortal peril in a different way. Some spun humans at speeds that should have caused unconsciousness. Others suspended them upside down, high above the ground. One particularly horrifying device launched humans straight up into the air, using what appeared to be controlled explosions. "The bungee jump is pretty popular too," Dr. Chen mentioned, pointing to a tower where humans were voluntarily throwing themselves off a high platform, with only an elastic cord attached to their ankles. "It's the closest you can get to free-falling without actually, dying." The fact that humans had invented recreational activities specifically designed to simulate dying was beyond Zethkari's comprehension. In the children's section, he discovered that humans began training their offspring for dangerous activities at an extremely young age. Small humans climbed structures, slid down steep surfaces, and spun themselves dizzy on rotating devices. Their parents watched approvingly and took pictures to commemorate the experience. "It's important for kids to take risks," explained a human mother whose child was currently hanging upside down from monkey bars. "Builds confidence and teaches them about their physical limits." Zethkari's species protected their young in carefully controlled environments until they reached full maturity. Humans apparently believed in exposing their children to controlled danger as part of their development process. After the amusement park, Dr. Chen took him to observe what she called spectator sports. They arrived at a massive stadium filled with thousands of humans, all gathered to watch other humans engage in ritualized combat. "This is football," Dr. Chen explained as they took their seats. "Different from the football Jake plays. This is the professional version." On the field below, two groups of exceptionally large humans were attempting to move an object from one end of the field to the other. The process involved them running directly into each other at full speed, creating impacts that Zethkari could hear from their seats high above. "Is this warfare?" he asked, confused. "No, it's entertainment. Those players train for years to compete at this level. They're considered elite athletes." Elite athletes. Humans who were celebrated for their ability to collide with other humans more effectively than average. The crowd around them cheered when the collisions were particularly violent. Humans jumped up and down, shouted encouragement, and expressed genuine emotional investment in which group of combatants would triumph. When one player was injured and had to be carried off the field, the crowd applauded his courage rather than expressing concern for his well-being. "Do they ever die during these contests?" Zethkari asked. "Very rarely in modern times," Dr. Chen replied. "Safety equipment has improved a lot. Though players do get concussions, broken bones, torn muscles, that sort of thing. That sort of thing." Serious injuries were considered an acceptable side effect of entertainment. During halftime, Dr. Chen explained other popular human sports. Ice hockey involved humans sliding on frozen water, while hitting a small object with sticks and checking each other into walls. Boxing was literally two humans punching each other until one could no longer continue. Mixed martial arts combined various forms of hand-to-hand combat into a single competition. Do humans have any non-violent sports? Sethkari asked hopefully. Oh, sure. Tennis, golf, swimming, track and field. She paused. Though even those can be dangerous. Golfers get struck by lightning, swimmers can drown. Runners collapse from exhaustion. Even their peaceful activities carried mortal risks. After the sporting event, Dr. Chen suggested they attend what she called a movie. This turned out to be a darkened room where humans sat together and watched projected images while consuming snacks. This should be relaxing, Sethkari thought. The film Dr. Chen selected was described as an action adventure suitable for general audiences. Within the first 10 minutes, Sethkari watched fictional humans survive explosions, engage in high-speed chases, fall from great heights, and battle various dangerous creatures. The audience around him seemed to enjoy these scenes immensely, gasping and cheering at particularly dramatic moments. This is considered entertainment for all ages? Sethkari asked during a scene where the hero was hanging from a helicopter over a lava flow. This is pretty mild, replied a young human sitting nearby. You should see the R-rated stuff. Sethkari didn't want to know what worse versions of this entertainment might look like. As the film continued, he realized that humans didn't just engage in dangerous activities in real life. They also created fictional scenarios that were even more dangerous for the purpose of vicarious thrills. The hero survived situations that would have killed any reasonable being multiple times over, and the audience seemed to appreciate the creativity involved in putting him in increasingly perilous circumstances. Why do humans enjoy watching simulated danger? Sethkari asked during a quieter moment. It's exciting, Dr. Chen replied. Gets your adrenaline pumping. Makes you feel alive. The concept that humans needed to experience fear in order to feel properly alive was perhaps the most alien thing he'd encountered yet. After the movie, they walked through what Dr. Chen called downtown nightlife. The streets were filled with humans engaging in various recreational activities. Some were consuming alcohol, a poison that affected their brain function but was considered socially acceptable. Others were dancing to loud music in crowded spaces, or participating in activities like karaoke, where they performed for strangers despite having no professional training. Young humans rode skateboards through traffic, performed acrobatic stunts on bicycles, and engaged in what appeared to be competitive loud talking outside various establishments. None of these activities seemed necessary for survival, yet humans participated enthusiastically. Dr. Chen, Sethkari said as they walked back to their vehicle, I'm beginning to think that humans might be the most unusual species in the galaxy. Unusual how? She asked. Most civilized species develop entertainment that emphasizes safety, comfort, and intellectual stimulation. Humans seem to have developed entertainment specifically designed to simulate the dangers your ancestors faced when your species was still primitive. Dr. Chen considered this. Maybe we just like to be reminded that we're alive, she said. Comfortable can be boring. The idea that comfort was something to be avoided, rather than achieved, suggested that humans had evolved along a completely different path than any other sapient species Sethkari knew about. As they drove through the city, past humans engaging in late-night recreational activities that would be considered emergency situations on any other world. Sethkari wondered how he was going to explain any of this to the Galactic Council. How do you describe a species that considers danger to be entertainment? Sethkari sat in his temporary quarters, staring at the blank diplomatic report on his screen. How could he possibly explain humanity to the Galactic Council? Every sentence he tried to write sounded like the ravings of someone who had suffered severe mental trauma. Humans voluntarily expose themselves to radiation for scientific advancement. Delete. Human. Children are trained to engage in dangerous activities for entertainment. Delete. Humans have developed an entire medical specialty dedicated to treating injuries caused by recreational activities. Delete. None of it sounded believable, even though he had witnessed it all personally. Dr. Chen arrived that morning with a different agenda. I've been thinking about your observations, she said. I wonder if we're approaching this wrong. Instead of showing you what humans do, maybe we should talk about why we do it. She had arranged meetings with humans from various walks of life, not to observe their activities, but to discuss their motivations and perspectives. Their first conversation was with Dr. Maria Santos, the emergency room physician they had met earlier. Dr. Santos, Seth Kari began carefully, your species seems to have an unusual relationship with danger. From my perspective, humans actively seek out situations that could cause harm. Dr. Santos nodded thoughtfully. I can see how it might look that way. But I think you're missing something important. We don't seek danger for its own sake. We accept risk in pursuit of something valuable. Could you explain the distinction? Take my job, for example. Emergency medicine is dangerous. We're exposed to diseases, we work with unstable patients, we make life or death decisions under pressure. But we do it because saving lives is worth the risk. The danger isn't the goal. Helping people is the goal. Seth Kari considered this. But surely there are safer ways to help people. Maybe, but not as effective ones. Emergency medicine requires split-second decisions and direct intervention. You can't save someone from cardiac arrest by being cautious about it. Their next conversation was with Captain Rodriguez from the fire station. Seth Kari asked him directly why he had chosen a profession that involved running into burning buildings. When I was 7 years old, our house caught fire, Rodriguez explained. A firefighter ran inside and carried me out while my parents were trapped outside. That man risked his life for a stranger's child. I wanted to be someone who could do that for other people. But weren't you afraid? Terrified, Rodriguez admitted. Still am every time we get a call. Fear keeps you alive. It makes you careful, makes you think before you act. But fear shouldn't stop you from doing what's right. Seth Kari spoke with Dr. Martinez from the chemistry lab, who explained that working with dangerous chemicals had led to breakthroughs in materials science that would benefit all of humanity. The rock climber he met talked about the mental discipline required to face fear and overcome it. The teacher who had taken her students to visit the fire station explained that children needed to learn about both safety and courage. Each conversation revealed the same pattern. Humans didn't seek danger for thrills, but they were willing to accept risk when the potential benefits were significant enough. They had developed an entire philosophy around the concept of calculated risk, carefully weighing potential harm against potential gain. Your species chooses courage over comfort, Seth Kari observed during a conversation with Dr. Chen. Not always, she replied honestly. Plenty of humans choose safe, comfortable lives. But our culture admires people who take meaningful risks. We respect astronauts who explore space, doctors who work with dangerous diseases, teachers who work in difficult schools, parents who have children knowing they might suffer. Parents who have children knowing they might suffer. Having children is the biggest risk any human takes, Dr. Chen explained. You're creating a person who will definitely experience pain, loss, and eventually death. But most of us think life is valuable enough to justify that risk. This perspective was revolutionary for Seth Kari. His species only reproduced when conditions were optimal and risks were minimal. Humans created new life specifically because they believed existence was worthwhile despite its dangers. Dr. Chen, he said slowly, I think I'm beginning to understand something important about humanity. What's that? My species evolved to survive by avoiding threats. We became intelligent because intelligence helped us identify and escape from danger. But humans evolved differently. How so? You became intelligent so you could face threats more effectively. Your intelligence isn't designed to help you avoid challenges, it's designed to help you overcome them. Dr. Chen smiled. That's probably the most insightful thing anyone said about our species since first contact. Over the following days, Seth Kari continued his conversations with humans from all backgrounds. He spoke with elderly humans who had lived through wars and natural disasters, young humans planning careers in dangerous fields, and middle-aged humans who had changed careers to pursue more meaningful but riskier paths. The pattern was consistent. Humans understood that life involved unavoidable risks, so they had developed cultural values that emphasized making those risks worthwhile. They didn't minimize danger. They accepted it as the price of achievement. Your species, Seth Kari told Dr. Chen as he prepared his final report, has solved a problem that my people never even recognized existed. What problem is that? How to live meaningfully in a universe that is inherently dangerous. My species focused on making life safer. Yours focused on making life worthwhile despite the danger. His final report to the Galactic Council was unlike any diplomatic assessment in the organization's history. Humanity represents a fundamentally different approach to sapient evolution than any previously documented species. While most civilizations develop intelligence as a tool for avoiding threats, humans have developed intelligence as a tool for overcoming threats. This has resulted in a species that views challenge and risk as opportunities rather than obstacles. Humans do not engage in dangerous activities due to poor judgment or insufficient caution. They engage in dangerous activities because they have determined that certain goals are worth accepting certain risks. Their technological advancement, social cooperation, and cultural achievements are direct results of this philosophy. They explore space because exploration is worth the risk of death. They practice medicine because healing others is worth the risk of disease. They have children because creating new life is worth the risk of loss. Recommendation: humanity should be offered full membership in the Galactic Council with no restrictions. However, special accommodations should be made for human representatives, as their normal activities may cause distress to representatives of more cautious species. Additionally, I recommend establishing a cultural exchange program. Other species could benefit from understanding humanity's approach to risk management, while humans could learn from species that have mastered different approaches to civilization building. Personal note: I have requested a transfer to permanent duty as ambassador to Earth. Working with humans has taught me that growth requires accepting some degree of risk, and I find myself curious about what other challenges might teach me about myself and my species. 6 months later, Seth Kari stood on a platform overlooking a human rock-climbing gym, wearing safety equipment that would have been considered military-grade protection on his homeworld. Dr. Chen stood beside him, also wearing protective gear. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "We could start with something easier." "Dr. Chen," Seth Kari replied, adjusting his helmet. "I've spent my entire life avoiding situations that might cause discomfort. I have recently discovered that discomfort might be the price of discovering what I am capable of." "Very philosophical," she said, grinning. "But maybe we should start with the beginner wall." Seth Kari looked up at the wall of artificial rocks, handholds, and safety ropes. 6 months ago, the sight would have sent him into cardiac arrest. Now it looked like an interesting challenge. "Dr. Chen," he said, "I believe I am beginning to understand what humans mean when they say something looks like fun." As he approached the climbing wall, Seth Kari reflected on how much his perspective had changed. He was still a cautious Velthari who believed in careful risk assessment, but he had learned that avoiding all risks meant avoiding all opportunities for growth. The first handhold was solid and secure. The second was slightly more challenging. By the third, Seth Kari was beginning to understand why humans found danger exciting rather than terrifying. It meant you were alive, and you were doing something that mattered. He climbed higher, one carefully calculated risk at a time.